A Suburban Nightmare. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
On October 13th, 1982, Stacy Perman and other locals went to the house of the Salomon family, a well-liked social family on their street, noticing that the Salomons' pool had overflowed and it was spilling into their yards. She and a group of concerned friends found a locked door, cars in the driveway, and the family's cocker spaniel, Mish Mish, hanging out in a soaking backyard. It was a puzzling scene. But this was only the start to a 10-year nightmare spanning Southern California to London, spawning 3 trials and countless legal hearings exposing family secrets and heartbreak. Today we're talking about the mysterious and unsolved disappearance of the Salomon family. Looking in, the Salomons were a pretty normal, modern American family. Elaine and Saul first met in 1971 at a bar in Hollywood, California. Elaine was a 28-year-old divorcee with a 4-year-old daughter, Michelle. Saul was a handsome 24-year-old Israeli immigrant who had landed in Los Angeles a year earlier, driving a taxi and selling encyclopedias before setting up a successful business refilling fire extinguishers. After they married and had their son, Mitch, they moved out of their Reseda condo to their home on Lassen Street, a quiet cul-de-sac in Northridge. Elaine worked as a volunteer counselor at a local clinic. The kids went to a good school. They even had a family dog, a friendly spaniel named Mish Mish. They continued to thrive. The family had great clothes, a baby grand piano, Greek statues around their new pool, and always bought the latest technology of the time, a large screen TV, VCRs, and cassettes. They loved nice cars in sexy colors, including a canary yellow Continental Mark V, a midnight blue Mercedes-Benz, and a burgundy Rolls-Royce. Michelle was a typical boy-crazy teenage girl who loved sleepovers and nice dinners. One of her favorite restaurants was on the rooftop at the Bonaventure Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. On Tuesday, October 12th, the family spent the day hanging out with Elaine's parents, the Malerowitzes, and at around 6 p.m., Saul left to go to a car auction with a business associate named Harvey Raider. Elaine's parents left around 10:30 p.m. Later, Elaine made a call to her friend, mentioning that her husband's associate, Harvey Raider, was at the door. Elaine hung up with her friend. Her friend didn't pay much attention to the sudden interruption. That call would be the last anyone would ever hear from anyone in the Salomon family. The next evening, neighbors noticed the pool overflowing. In the driveway were Saul's burgundy Rolls-Royce and his work van, with Apollo fire extinguishers emblazoned on the side. Saul's Mercedes-Benz was gone. As neighbors and friends started talking to one another, it became clear that no one had seen any of the Salomons that day. No word from Saul, Elaine had not shown up to her shift at the clinic, and Mitchell and Michelle had both not been to school. After a frenzied call, LAPD's Devonshire division pulled up to the Salomons' ranch house and checked the perimeter, saying nothing seemed amiss. Neighbor Marty Laffer, a resigned IRS criminal investigator, urged them to check inside the house. When Elaine goes to the bathroom, all of her friends and relatives know, he told them. There's 2 kids involved, and it doesn't make sense that they would lock up the house and be gone without telling anybody. The police did soon enter the locked house through a bathroom window, and some of the neighbors followed. The team noted no sign of a break-in, no damage, and the burglar alarm had not been activated. Casing the house, there were no signs of a struggle. Nothing was missing. Even the beds were made, the police said. That's when another neighbor panicked. Elaine never made the beds, she said. Something was wrong. In the backyard, the water seemed to be set to flow into the pool on purpose, and there was a baseball bat near the wet bar. The most disturbing details were found in daughter Michelle's room. The pillowcases, sheets, and bedspread were missing from Michelle's bed, and there were small blood splatters on the bedroom wall and mattress. Inexplicably, a piece of carpet had been cut from the floor and then covered with a bathroom rug. On October 17th, more clues were found. Strewn haphazardly along the Antelope Valley Freeway, about 15 minutes from the house, were family passports, wallets, and photos. This was enough to convince the police that they were dealing with foul play, a kidnapping, or possible murder. On October 20th, a week after the Salomon family were reported missing, Daryl Gates, LA's police chief, held a press conference in which he characterized the investigation as, quote, difficult and perplexing, and as one that could, quote, prove to be very important. He described the blood in Michelle's bedroom. When asked how much, Gates responded that it was, quote, more blood than I would want to lose. He added that LAPD detectives had already been aware of Saul, but he refused to go into detail. In his statement, he also suggested that there might be ties to the Israeli mafia. Of course, the media ran with this information. Many rumors played into the fear around this case, mostly around Saul's Israeli roots. People thought that maybe the Salomons were in with the Israeli mob, or counterintelligence, or were drug dealers, or maybe something came back to haunt Saul from his days in the Israeli armed forces. The public was having a field day with the limited information that they had. Neighbors, however, were resigned to the fact that their friends were probably gone forever. During this time, police were focused on one person. You probably guessed who. The guy who Saul hung out with the day before. The guy who interrupted Elaine's call. Harvey Raider. And surprise, surprise, he was not a great guy. Let's take a break.
This episode is brought to you by Candy Crush Saga. The holidays can be pretty hectic, so take a little time for yourself with the ultimate holiday treat, the classic Match 3 puzzle Candy Crush Saga. And right now, you can catch the limited time event Sweet Surprise Season and win sweet daily rewards like a super rare party booster and up to 10 gold bars. Don't miss out. Play Sweet Surprise Season and Candy Crush Saga and crush it this holiday season now until January 1st. Download from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Facebook leads the industry in stopping bad actors online. That's because they've invested $13 billion in teams and technology to enhance safety over the last 5 years. It's working. In just the past few months, they've taken down 1.7 billion fake accounts to stop bad actors from doing harm. But working to reduce harmful and illicit content on their platforms is never done. Learn more about how they're helping people connect and share safely at about.fb.com/safety.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Hello.
How are you doing? This is the check-in.
This is it. We're getting close to the end of the year.
Yeah, we're at the end of the year, like you said.
We're here. We've made it in whatever form you're in, whatever place you're at.
And what have we learned?
Oh, boy.
We've learned that I think sometimes you don't want to hear all the chit-chat or the ads when you listen to Ghost Town.
Oh, yeah?
Patreon.com/Ghost Town Pod is a great place to go.
Sure.
Especially if you want to go back and binge.
Yeah. Don't go to spa. Go to go to our Patreon.
Yeah, it's a great place to hang.
Go to a gym.
No.
Go to the Patreon.
Work out or lack of workout your mind. If anything, it'll devolve you, but so what?
Sometimes we need a de-evolution.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and this is the place to do it.
Yeah.
And we want to say hello to everyone who's listening. Thank you. Anyone who supports the show. Anyone who is a patron. And, of course, our government.
Absolutely.
Roll call.
Hello.
Ashley Matson.
Hello.
Dara Rosenzweig.
Hi.
David Bull.
Bonjour.
James Harrington.
Hi.
And the one and only.
The only in one.
Governor extraordinaire.
Governess.
Sure.
Avian Noble.
Thank you for the support. And we have a few tiny little baby, tiny little Apple Podcast reviews.
Tiny potties.
That's made it even more weird than me saying baby.
Sorry.
Between that and the baby.
God.
This is, see, you miss
Someone
all
put
this.
me out of my seat.
If you want early access to these episodes, you miss things like baby potty, daddy mommy.
God, I'm 400 years old. I can't even speak in a sentence anymore.
Well, Dan4515 in the USA says hella tight, 5 stars.
That's the best compliment someone could ever give me.
Need I say more? That's like a Northern California thing. Even though this episode is, well, it's northern to where we are.
Yeah.
And then from Tote Bag User in India.
Nice. Like you. I love you already.
One of my favorites, and it's spelled with favor with the O-U-R. So
Ooh,
it's
classy.
I really like listening to this podcast when I'm painting or completing assignments. I don't know why people keep complaining about the chat/gossip part of the episodes. Like, it's so interesting to listen to. Thank you for the podcast.
Oh, they're making art while they're listening to art.
Yeah, maybe she needs another tote bag. Is there a Ghost Town tote bag? Can make that happen.
We can make that happen.
Do you really need another tote bag, though? I feel like if you have tote bags, you already have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure. If you're into totes, you're into totes.
But if you're into the San Fernando Valley, I know this area and I know the street. I know Lassen because I'm not going to say where and what and why, but taking Lassen very often, probably 2-3 times a month.
Wow.
I know this area, and I'm excited about the year it takes place.
Whoa.
The area. I'm not excited that people are missing.
No.
But as far as something that occurred, I'm interested in this kind of story in this area and the time period. I wish it was under better circumstances, but I know this area, and I'm very curious to maybe locate some of the places respectfully.
Piece it together.
Piece it together.
Absolutely. Well, let's get back there to where Jason's most familiar, maybe most at home. Northridge, California. And I also want to say, too, that I might not be pronouncing the Salomon family name correctly. Let me know if it's right or wrong. I know it's Israeli, and I'm trying to do my best here, but bear with me. So the prime suspect of the Salomon case was Saul Salomon's friend and business associate, Harvey Raider. Raider was a British national with a long criminal record. He was convicted of more than a dozen crimes, some of which he was imprisoned for, armed robberies and elaborate insurance fraud schemes. One of his big insurance fraud crimes involved setting fire to the home of Saudi Sheikh Mohammed Al Fassi, for which he had avoided jail time by ratting out his other associates. He came to California and at the time of meeting the Salomons owned a car dealership in Reseda. Raider and Saul had a nasty falling out 2 years before the Salomon disappearance, so people were really shocked when Saul announced that he recently invested $20,000 into Raider's dealership. When authorities arrived at the dealership to question Raider, they were surprised to find Saul's missing Mercedes sitting in the garage. Raider had his own version of events surrounding the family's disappearance. He thought they were probably on vacation. According to Raider, the night he had met Saul, they had gone to a car auction in Saul's van, and after the auction, Saul wanted to be dropped off at a nearby Israeli restaurant. Raider dropped him there and took the van back to the Salomon home, where he got the keys to his Mercedes from Elaine, planning to take it to his shop for repairs. The police noted some discrepancies in Raider's story. Also, though Saul had left his house to meet Raider at 6, the car auction he was going to had actually ended at 5. The story itself was also inconsistent, at first saying that Elaine had handed him the keys, but later on saying he had gotten them out of the mailbox. Still, there wasn't enough evidence to hold him, so he was not arrested or brought in for further questioning. Then and forever on, Raider adamantly denied having anything to do with the disappearances, and even dropped info that he thought Saul was a gun runner selling illegal Uzis, revolvers, and automatic handguns. The craziest thing was, that part wasn't pure speculation. Saul had shown neighbors several Uzis that he was indeed selling. It was also uncovered that Saul had been involved in a Van Nuys apartment insurance scam. His neighbor, Marty Laffer, knew that Saul was no saint, but didn't believe he had mafia ties. After the family disappeared, out of respect, Marty kept Saul's business afloat for a short period and filed his taxes. He joked, and this is telling, quote, "It was probably the first honest return Saul ever filed." Meanwhile, other disturbing information was coming out about the Salomon family. Neighbors theorized that the family was murdered over a bad business deal. Some admitted they knew Saul was a criminal and a philanderer, traveling to Europe without Elaine, sleeping with prostitutes. They also kind of thought Saul was losing it. Before the disappearance, he had stopped bathing regularly and would hide wads of cash behind picture frames in his house. And Elaine wasn't a saint either. Friends of Elaine's knew she was unhappy and had a secret boyfriend that she loved. Before she disappeared, Elaine told everything to a friend of hers who convinced her to stay with Saul because she had a beautiful home, didn't have to work, and that her boyfriend was broke. The case had hit a dead end until October of 1983, when police were contacted by a John Belushi lookalike named Ashley Paul. It might be Paulie, but I think it is Paul, who had a story to tell. Paul was Raider's cousin and right-hand man, a taxi driver who said he had actually seen Raider and some, quote, Italian accomplices shoot Saul and his family and had helped bury the bodies out in the desert. Paul said Saul had been killed during a dispute about Saul's investment in the car business, and the family members were killed too, so nobody would find Raider out. Paul also said that Raider was responsible for the vanishings of a British couple named Peter and Joan Davis, who had gone missing a year earlier. Paul even led police out to the locations where he said the bodies were buried, but all they found was a tattered green quilt. One investigator would say, "We went out to the desert area and he was trying to show us a different area where he thought the bodies were buried, but nothing worked out. He was lying, or he didn't really want us to find the bodies because he thought if we never find them, no one could be prosecuted." Paul told police he was willing to testify against Raider in exchange for immunity, but after failing 4 polygraph tests, the police didn't agree to the exchange. He was a criminal himself and highly inconsistent. Not long after Paul was arrested, a Los Angeles municipal court judge held a closing hearing in which she ordered Paul's statements to be thrown out, concluding that the immunity deal was poorly worded and that Paul had been, quote, coerced into compromising himself. The DA lost his appeal of the decision and Paul got on a plane to go back to England. Still, this didn't mean Raider was done being pursued. On May 13, 1987, detectives ripped up part of the parking lot behind where his dealership's mechanical shop used to be, looking for bodies. When they found none, in 1987, Raider, who had been in London, re-entered the U.S. 3 months later with a false passport and was arrested. But police bumped into the same problem they initially had. All of the evidence against Raider was circumstantial. Also, now stories were popping up that people who claimed to see Saul Salomon in California after the family had disappeared. Desperate, the police called Paul to testify after all, but at that point he flat out refused. After 2 mistrials and the frustration of lots of Salomon friends and family, Raider was acquitted. Journalists have tried to contact Raider for a statement, anything, but his numbers are currently out of service. The man had vanished like the family who put him in the spotlight. To date, the Salomons remain missing, but so many questions remain. Raider was a bad guy, sure, but a murderer? Was Ashley Paul involved? A different business contact? Was it Saul Salomon himself or a boyfriend of Elaine's? Without more clues or admissions or some lost DNA evidence popping up, we'll probably never know.
I would imagine something of this magnitude to pull off a crime like this, it would be more than an impulse, like it just happening randomly, which it always could be. It sounds like something that was somewhat thought out, planned out to not find several bodies. You know, identifying several people seems like a lot of work. They had lives and they were connected to people. So to pull people off the grid like that probably would take someone who's professional, thought out. And I'm sure this guy, he probably has more information than he's telling.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I'm sure everyone probably knows that at that point, but sometimes maybe the price of dealing whatever you're dealing in is something like this. I mean, you see it on TV shows and movies, and it's got to come from somewhere. Not saying that that's the case, but early 80s, San Fernando Valley.
Totally.
Wild. I mean, a lot of, infamous crimes have happened then, and an interesting time in history. And
totally. And nobody is in it. Like, there's neighbors, but everyone has their own bias, especially in a story like this. Like, nobody is completely absolved of their crime. Like, nobody is completely at fault and nobody is completely innocent. Like, everyone kind of has their own self-interest in the case, I think. When it, the neighbors to the perpetrator, like, to all these people are kind of trying to give something away and hide something. So it's really, it feels like it's such a moving target to figure out. And that's why researching this case, it was such good insight to hear the neighbors and stories around the neighbors, because at least with that, you're getting the most objective view of all of it.
There's one person that I'd like to see if they have any information, be my mother-in-law, because she lives in the area and she hasn't said anything about it. She hasn't volunteered any information about this case. So,
oh, suspicious person.
I mean, unless she, I don't know, like buys me an expensive car, then I'll forget about it.
Oh,
but until then, Ghost Town has his mother-in-law.
Buy Jason a jewel-toned Mercedes-Benz. That's all I can say.
Facebook leads the industry in stopping bad actors online. That's because they've invested $13 billion in teams and technology to enhance safety over the last 5 years. It's working. In just the past few months, they've taken down 1.7 billion fake accounts to stop bad actors from doing harm. But working to reduce harmful and illicit content on their platforms is never done. Learn more about how they're helping people connect and share safely at about.fb.com/safety. Facebook leads the industry in stopping bad actors online. That's because they've invested $13 billion in teams and technology to enhance safety over the last 5 years. It's working. In just the past few months, they've taken down 1.7 billion fake accounts to stop bad actors from doing harm. But working to reduce harmful and illicit content on their platforms is never done. Learn more about how they're helping people connect and share safely at about.fb.com/safety.
Almost 90% of women have cellulite. And guess what? It's not their fault. We don't choose cellulite, but we can choose a different way to treat it. Meet Quo, collagenase Clostridium histolyticum, AAES, the first and only FDA-approved prescription injectable for moderate to severe cellulite in the buttocks of adult women. This non-surgical treatment is injected by an aesthetic specialist in 10 minutes or less. Individual results may vary. Do not receive if you are allergic to any collagenase or ingredients in Quo, or have an infection at the treatment site. May cause serious side effects, allergic reactions including anaphylaxis, and injection site bruising. Seek medical help right away for any signs of allergic hypersensitivity. Tell your doctor about all your medical conditions if you have a bleeding condition or take medicine that prevents clotting. Most common side effects include bruising, pain, hardness, itching, redness, discoloration, swelling, and warmth at the injection site. Ask your doctor about all possible side effects and for product information. If you're ready to get to the bottom of your cellulite, learn more and find a specialist at Quo.com.